All right. Good morning. Hello, everyone. So welcome to Marine Multi-Use to Achieve 30 by 30. I'm Sigrid Stokke-Nielsen from the Center for the Ocean and the Arctic, and I'll be your host for today. So this event is co-hosted by UN Global Compact Norway, and we've also had lots of planning support from Nordic Innovation. So let's start by unpacking the title. This might be a bit like tribal language for some. Marine multi-use, what does it mean, and what is 30 by 30? So marine multi-use is by making the most of ocean space through combining various types of marine activities in one space. For example, if you set up an offshore wind farm, could you use that area for something else at the same time, aquaculture or serving other industries? So I think the possibilities here are endless, but they are, of course, limited by technology, economy, and biology, and also maybe creativity. But why bother co-locating? Setting up wind farms, it's tricky enough in the first place, but I think there are three key reasons. The first one is that nature is not endless. So we can't, that includes the ocean, we can't keep allocating separate space for separate industries. Demand is growing, so more industries are competing for the same ocean space. And thirdly, we see conflicts arise. Fishermen, renewable energy developers, and others, they often clash over resources or area. So marine multi-use has the potential to reduce conflict, to spark innovation, and to create more circular systems. And this is a win-win-win, if you ask me. So what about 30 by 30? In Montreal, our leaders, they signed an agreement that we are committed to conserving 30% of the oceans by 2030. But how do we make that happen? So the connection we're trying to make here is combining the multi-use with the conservation piece. So today's discussion will explore how concentrating activities at sea might free up space in the ocean for conservation. So first up, we have Dorothy Dankel. I welcome you to come up on stage while I introduce you. She's a senior researcher at SINTEF, and she will explain why ocean conservation matters and why we need urgent action. She has extensive experience in both coexistence, but also digital twins of the ocean. I'm really looking forward to hearing her remarks. Give her a big hand of applause.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I think I couldn't have a better backdrop this morning. It's really wonderful to be here in Romsa. My name is Dorothy, and I work in Bergen at the little SINTEF office there in the research group Climate and Sustainability. And my job today is to tell you why 30 by 30 matters and set this into context. So I want to start off, is there anyone who has seen this amazing documentary on Netflix? Some of you have. If you have a subscription to Netflix, it's worth the price of the subscription to Netflix. This documentary is the biggest ocean documentary that has been made by the Emmy-winning producers of Blue Planet 2. And it's something that researchers in Norway have contributed to. This documentary uses a character called the global ocean current to connect all the different parts of the ocean. And also, there's some very clear messages and warnings that kind of come out from the observations of what's going on. For example, this octopus in the Indian Ocean that has actively changed its behavior to look for trash to camouflage itself for behavior. And these are just some of the small, if you ask me, gut-wrenching stories of why ocean conservation matters. Because we are affecting every part of the ocean from our human activity. And this is not just an ocean problem, this is a global problem. And the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services in 2019 had the big global assessment report on biodiversity and ecosystem services. So, for example, 25% of species are already threatened with extinction. Global biomass of wild mammals has fallen by 82%. 72% of indicators developed by indigenous peoples and local communities show ongoing deterioration of nature. So the list goes on and on and on. And the big question is, what can we do about it? From a science perspective, we start to think about different frameworks we can use to communicate these messages. For example, the planetary boundaries. But every time we do the updates to where we are with the planetary boundaries, it keeps getting worse and worse. It gets so worse that Johan Rockström says, we don't know how long we can keep transgressing these boundaries before combined pressures lead to irreversible change and harm. So, there is an urgency of ocean conservation, also because we live on the blue planet. When we talk about nature, we have to remember that most of our nature is found under the surface. So we can take a quick tillbakablick, what do you say, backwards in time. How have scientists and policymakers responded? And there was very clear messages that came out of the COP15 in 2022. And as was mentioned, the big success of this COP was that the 30 by 30 agreement, that the global community shall conserve 30% of terrestrial and marine habitat by 2030. So this sets the stage of asking the question, so how are we going to do that? So we can talk about nature conservation. We can also talk about nature restoration. I'm going to actually talk about conservation and some specific definitions here, because we have the Convention on Biological Diversity. This goes way back to 1992, and the definition of MPAs, marine protected areas. And these are areas that have been reserved by legislation or other effective means, including custom, with the effect that its marine and or coastal biodiversity enjoys a higher level of protection than its surroundings. And this is for flora, fauna, historical, and cultural features of that nature area. So there's also something called these other effective area-based conservation measures, which Norway has been looking into to see if this can help get more area for nature conservation. And an OECM, as they're called, is not an MPA, but it's basically saying an area that has the ability to protect biodiversity. So they don't need to have a primary conservation objective, but they have to deliver effective conservation outcomes. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because there is this thing called the Norwegian paradox here. Does anyone know how much ocean Norway currently protects? Yeah? Definitely less than 10%. I saw something, Naturvernforbundet said 4.5, and then I'm talking to some of my colleagues at the Institute of Marine Research, and they're like, is it that much? It depends on the definition of what we're talking about. And these OECMs then were reviewed by colleagues at NTNU in Trondheim on the current compliance status in relation to the CBD and biodiversity, international biodiversity measures. And it's a long report, goes bit by bit, and basically, in a nutshell, it's pointing to this concept of a paper park. These aren't delivering the results that we need for ocean conservation, Norway's current OECMs. We need to do better. And there's one particular figure that kind of explains it all, and it's this map here. In this map, the green and the orange are the very vulnerable areas, the protected areas. The orange is protected bottom habitat, and the red is the area suggested to open for deep sea mining. So there's basically a one-to-one relationship here. There's an overlap. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. We have to have real protection. And especially now, since we're here in Arctic Frontiers, and we know that the Arctic is going from white to blue, we also have to talk about the Central Arctic Ocean. And here, the UN has on the table the High Seas Treaty, this new international legally binding instrument under the UN Law of the Sea that's aimed at the conservation, sustainable use of marine biodiversity in the areas beyond national jurisdiction. The BBNJ Treaty, as it's called. It's on the table. 60 countries need to ratify it before it can go into effect. Right now, there's 15 that have ratified it. The ratification has to happen before it expires on September 20th. And the big question here we have for Norway is, will Norway step up? Will Norway sign this? Because this can also be a very important signal to how we want to treat the Arctic and the Central Arctic Ocean, especially when it becomes ice-free in the summers coming. And then on the topic of multi-use, I work with coexistence and offshore wind. It's a very exciting space for cross-sectoral dialogue that we have with fishers and wind developers. And some wind developers then say, hey, you know, bottom trolling is bad and we need to conserve areas and fishermen don't want to fish in a wind park. Could we use a wind park to get closer to 30 by 30? Well, the easy answer to that is no. But multi-use can make economic sense and at the same time save the ocean for itself. We need to conserve areas that have no human activity. And by concentrating really smart ways to concentrate activity, also, for example, in the Olamur project, EU Ocean Missions project that I'm working on, this is shown as a demonstration across 3 different demo sites that this could be really smart in many different ways, attacking both the ecological and economic aspects of sustainability, but also the social, and creating jobs and new markets. But I want to end with some thoughts now. One of my mentors, Silvio Fontowitz, philosopher of science, talks about, I don't care about the product, I care about the process. And here, process is everything. We are committed individuals in the room who are playing into ideas, solutions, collaboration across sectors so that we can continue to live on the planet, that we can continue the ecosystem services that nature gives us. And there's one process that we currently don't do in Norway, as I argue we should, and that's marine spatial planning. That this is a really fantastic opportunity where industry leaders want marine spatial planning. We want to work together. We want multi-use, but it has to be planned. And part of that planning is planning for conservation, planning to meet the 30-30 goals. Because in the parliamentary white paper that came out on naturmangfold and biodiversity, there is no plan for 30-30, but we have to report on it. So it's time for Norway to take action, Madam Minister. This is an invitation. And also, I want to inform some of you about how we in the scientific community are responding to this call. Maybe some of you have heard, but Norway is putting together basically the Arctic Ocean 2050 program right now, a 10-year program where we want to integrate diverse knowledge. It's actually the policymakers that are asking for this. And we see that we have to have a stronger connection between scientific research and policymakers. We have to do this together. We need arenas where we make this action actually happen. And so I want to end by talking about this last part of Our Oceans documentary and this really heart and throat moment when the mother polar bear is getting further and further away from her cub that can't keep up. She has 2 cubs, and one can and one can't keep up. And when you think that she's going to give up on that cub, she turns around and brings it up from the icy water back onto the ice, and they dredge on. So it's time for us now to not turn our back to nature, to turn around and say, we're going to take responsibility, because 30 by 30 only matters if we actually take action. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dorothy. That was great, putting it all into context like that. Thank you. Next, we have the honor of hearing from Marianne Sivertsen Næss. She's the Norwegian Minister of Fisheries and Ocean. She is here to talk about Norway's commitment to sustainable ocean management. And as a minister, she oversees policies on maritime and marine research and innovation, and also fisheries and aquaculture policy. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your remarks. Welcome up on stage, Marianne.
Thank you so much, and it's so nice to be here in this lovely environment. Ladies and gentlemen, dear all, Norway is a proud and prominent maritime nation with a deep connection to the sea and the industries that thrive upon it. The government has bold ambitions for our marine industries, ambitions that recognize the ocean both as a source of opportunities and a shared responsibility. As we increase activity at sea, we must balance opportunities with obligations. Sustainable use must go hand in hand with conservation. We have extensive ocean areas and promote sustainable management of our entire ocean area. Conservation and protection through MPAs and OECMs are important tools within such sustainable, holistic, and ecosystem-based management. Knowledge and careful management will continue to be our compass as we navigate these waters towards the future. Our vision is clear: to maximize value creation and employment from the ocean while ensuring its health for future generations. This is not an easy task. It requires a science-based approach informed by research and collaboration, especially with the leading scientific communities here in Tromsø, which are vital to our efforts. But let us be honest about the dilemmas we face. We need to extract more food from the ocean to enhance global food security. We need more energy from the ocean to power a greener future. And we need to transform maritime transport to reduce emissions. All of this requires space, and it must be done while protecting marine ecosystems and preserving biodiversity. There is an urgency in this work. The dual crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss demand immediate and wise action. We must make informed decisions that enable coexistence. Coexistence between industries and the marine environment. However, Norway's management model has shown that it is possible. Through sector-based regulations and comprehensive management plans, we have demonstrated that sustainable use of the ocean is achievable. Last year, we launched an ocean industry plan with 10 principles for coexistence, laying the foundation for a sustainable ocean economy. The concept of marine multi-use, which is the topic here today, can play an important role in this vision. The Center of the Ocean and the Arctic work with marine industrial parks exemplifies how collocation of different marine industries may be a way of achieving efficient utilization of the area, while at the same time promoting innovation and helping to combat both the climate and nature crisis. This is the future we are building, a future where innovative solutions grounded in shared knowledge and advanced technology create synergies between industries, protect marine ecosystems, and deliver value for generations to come. Dear all, together we can ensure that the blue economy is not just sustainable, but transformative. Let us embrace this responsibility with ambition and determination. I look forward to discussing and learning more about the opportunities and challenges with multi-use in the panel. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Minister, for those inspiring words. And I think you're saying it's not an easy task. So I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into the discussion here. It's time for our first panel. I would urge you all to find your places while I introduce you here. We have a tight program for today, so we need to try to be on time. So first of all, we have Emil Geiroth moderating this session. He is an advisor at Nordic Innovation, and in his role, he works to make sure that the ocean economy in the Nordic region is more sustainable, competitive, and innovative. Thank you, Emil. Joining the panel is also the Minister, Marianne Sivertsen Næss, so she can also come and find her seat. We're also very delighted to welcome Shardina Vicheva. She's Director General of the European Commission's Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. So I think we have the EU voice very well represented here. Welcome. We also have Øyvind Berg. He is a senior researcher at the Institute of Marine Research, and he's also the coordinator of the EU-funded multi-use project Olamur that was mentioned by Dorothy earlier, and he will bring his expertise on multi-use and marine spatial planning. Finally, we have Nina Jensen. She is CEO of Rev Ocean, and she will bring a wealth of experience as a marine biologist and advocate for responsible solutions for the ocean. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing your discussions. Give a big round of applause for the panel.
All right. Well, thank you, Sigrid. I'm delighted to be here with this incredible panel to talk about multi-use at sea, a topic that we at Nordic Innovation have done a lot of work on over the past few years. But before we launch into our discussion, I know that Director General Vicheva, you have a few remarks that you would like to start with. Janina, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yes. Thank you very much. Where would you like me to? There or there? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. So I think that we have a wonderful view. Seeing me on the stage is not so important. More important is that we see this beautiful setting around us, Tromsø. Thank you for welcoming us so nicely every year. I'm delighted to be in this panel. When we discussed up front, we were exchanging about the experience of the European Union in maritime spatial planning. It's a very complex topic with which we have been engaged for a number of years. So we have legislation in place for more than 10 years now on maritime spatial planning. So you can imagine that the thought around it started much earlier. Now the needs are even aggravating more and more because of what our first speaker told us about. We have much higher commitment on conservation, which has to be factored into any maritime spatial planning. We have now all the triple crisis elements much more exacerbated for the ocean, talking about pollution, talking about loss of biodiversity, talking about climate change. So we have to ensure that ocean is healthy. Ocean, if it is healthy, then it will be able to perform its climate function, which is absolutely essential. If ocean is healthy, biodiversity will be held and probably reversed. And if the ocean is healthy, it will be productive for all the solutions we would like to have out of the blue economy. And it has to happen on the same surface, the same space, and it's not only the surface, it's the column, it's the seabed. So from this perspective, it's even more important today that we have a sound planning and arranging by design of everything that we want to do at sea, in the ocean. So what we did back in 2014, we set up the principles and criteria around the maritime spatial planning, which are conservation and preservation of the resource, sustainability, efficiency of all the solutions at sea, synergies, no clash at sea, which is not easy to achieve. And all that we can achieve only through engagement of all stakeholders. For that sake, we have established a platform, MSP platform, where everybody can share experiences. And not only that, we have sharing of the national maritime spatial plans. So throughout these 10 years, so you see how much time it took us, we have 20 out of the 22 coastal states with ready maritime spatial plans. And what is even more important is cooperation, because borders at sea are just virtual. We cannot do things at sea by bordering and establishing limits. So cross-border sea cooperation is absolutely essential. So this happens in this platform. And talking about multi-use, it is something that we have to start doing coherently, comprehensively, and massively. Because indeed, if we have to achieve the 30 by 30, then we have to congest ourselves into a more limited maritime space. On top, I'm sure that you follow the European Green Deal, where the European Union commits to have carbon neutral behavior by 2050, that means that we need new solutions. And we cannot achieve this 2050 target if we don't expand, for example, offshore wind. So many of the solutions are there to be achieved by expanding blue economy. So the only way is multi-use. And last year, something that probably can inspire you with some of the examples that we demonstrate there, we have initiated an interactive space for multi-use of maritime space. And we have a couple of examples. One of the examples was nicely presented. It was financed by Horizon, how we can have aquaculture or seaweed cultivation, solar and offshore wind. But I will give you another example, which is very relevant also for Norway, because our fishers all the time feel cornered into this maritime spatial planning debate. So, offshore France, we have a very nice project where the design of offshore wind park was made in a way so that small-scale fisheries can continue, only by having 1 kilometer at least distance between the windmills. So that means that we need to think of solutions by design. And if you're asking me why it is not comprehensively done, it is because it's complex from governance point of view. We need stakeholders' engagement par excellence. It is also because it needs solutions by design. So it's not that we construct offshore park, wind park, and then we think. No, it has to be done by design. And the third very important element is we need knowledge. And there I can talk a lot, but I will stop because we have a distinguished panel to speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Director General. It's very interesting. And I know that you're also preparing to launch an Ocean Pact. That work has started. So perhaps you can talk a bit more about that in a minute. But I wanted to bring in Øyvind first to this panel, because Øyvind Berg, you're a senior scientist at the Institute of Marine Research here in Norway, and you're also the project leader for Olamur. So perhaps uniquely on this panel, you are actually sort of working on the ground with implementing multi-use. So could you tell us a bit more about how you're working in Olamur and where you're at?
Yeah, I'm the coordinator of a large EU flagship project called Olamur. Yeah. We work on multi-use in the North Sea and Baltic basins. So we produce, actually we're doing things in practical. We have a pretty large-scale production of mussels and seaweeds within areas of wind farms. It's done as a large EU-financed project. It goes into a family of more European-related projects, started out with coexistence and marine spatial planning, now going via engineering-oriented projects to the present project, which are really focused on the aquaculture and the biological sides, as well as the social sides of this. Because there are effects on the societies around, we can see that not only does the wind farm itself create jobs nearby, it also creates jobs by allocating space for low-trophic aquaculture. And the low-trophic organisms, they have a lot of environmental good sides. For instance, the seaweeds can take up nutrients from the sea. The mussels can actually filter particles from the sea. So in a large scale, you can actually improve the environment by doing this kind of aquaculture. And then there is a major societal effect of these kind of activities. Of course, they produce energy. We do it in large-scale offshore wind farms. And Europe has recently learned by a very tragic way that energy security is absolutely essential. And I would argue that you can say exactly the same when it comes to food security, including seafood security. Now we know that Europe has had traditionally a low deficit on both energy as well as seafood. On seafood, it's really low. Yeah. Well, egoistically, as a Norwegian citizen, that's good for us because energy and seafood are the things we do here. But of course, in a European if I put the European hat on, I work for the union, so I have to do that. And it's also fair to do it. It's not sustainable. Doesn't give us the security we need. So we have to develop the offshore aquaculture, but we have to do it in a sustainable way. And here multi-use comes in as a very good way of thinking, because if you combine two activities on the same area, theoretically what you do is reducing the pressure on area by a factor of 2. You use the same area for two different purposes, and they are not in conflict. And aquaculture and wind farms, and even floating solar farms that some has experimented with, does not harm the aquaculture activities. And it's not limited to the low-trophic aquaculture. There are interesting developments also on high trophic levels, including salmon and sea bass within offshore wind farms. So this development now goes on, and there is a momentum for this. We see certain interest from the wind farming industry. Probably they are getting more goodwill in societal goodwill by saying we are not excluding food production. We are actually facilitating for food production, not so much to fisheries, even though fisheries can go on, as you explained. There are solutions for that, but also that in areas where the fisheries are low anyway, aquaculture in a sustainable way can give us some food production which would otherwise not be possible. So that's where we are now. We are in the middle of a large project. This goes into, there are several projects working together here, including, I would mention, one major Dutch-led project called the Ult Farms. And there are new projects coming up here. So it's a large effort here. One thing I would like to add also is that the European nations have very different traditions regarding marine spatial planning. If you look at the map, most of the sectors of most European states are small areas, which means they have to think. Some of us are in an area with a small population and a very large marine area. Unfortunately, that does not mean that we don't have to think, because if we are to develop our marine sector, we have to think, where are the 30% we are going to protect for strict protect? And the rest, the areas where we utilize, we have to do that sustainable as well. For instance, there are fish going on here. There are fish spawning grounds, for instance. They have to be protected, certainly. There are ecosystem services which we have to protect, because not as a general protection, but because they are important for us.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So if I could bring you into this, Nina Jensen. So you're the CEO of RevOcean, and part of what you do is that you try to transform knowledge into practical solutions. How do you do that when it comes to multi-use, or how does that figure into your work now?
So first of all, we've been privileged to be part of the brilliant work that the Center for the Ocean and Arctic has done to really put this topic on the agenda. So if anyone wants to learn more about marine multi-use, I would suggest downloading a few reports from their website. But we also tried to apply it practically, as we are in the same extended family as a major Norwegian oil company, which is Aker BP. And with them, we explored whether it would be possible to extend the life of an oil platform that is nearing its end of life, and whether that could be used as the basis for marine industrial parks. We called it Circular, and it was the Ula platform. And did quite extensive work to really explore whether we could, once the oil production was phased out, rather than removing the structure, if it could be used for offshore wind production, food production from aquaculture, and combined with certain types of fisheries, whether we could have onboard battery packs so that the the energy produced from the wind farms could be directly absorbed by the batteries, and then in addition used to fuel ships that were in transit, so that you could charge them or fuel them as they were in transit, just to mention a few. Unfortunately, it proved to be much more difficult than we thought. The lifetime of the platforms weren't such that it made financial sense. And there's also a big growing industry in removing platforms, which seems to be more profitable. And of course, the steel from the platforms is being reused for other purposes.
So actually dismantling them completely.
Dismantling them, in this case, at least made more sense. We explored the same together with Equinor for some of their platforms, and unfortunately, we got the same results there. But I think the key point is the idea is good, and there is willingness from the industry to really look into this as an opportunity. And multi-use is a no-brainer going forward because we're simply running out of space, both on land and on the ocean. And nature is being increasingly squeezed out for our industrial activities. So combining this in smart ways, like Eivind is alluding to, or that we heard from the EU, is the way we have to go. Yep. But it all really starts with having the knowledge of these areas. And I think Dorothy alluded to this really, really well. We're seeing some incredibly important, sensitive areas that really should be protected that are now being proposed for deep sea mining or other types of industrial activities. So to be doing marine industrial parks or multi-use and also marine spatial planning, you really need to start with the basics, the knowledge, and having proper maps of the region showing where is the most important biodiversity. What are the areas that we're going to protect? What have we committed to, and how does that translate on the ground? And what are the industrial activities that are planned in these different areas so that you can combine them in meaningful ways, but most importantly, protecting what is still left because we're running out of biodiversity.
Yeah. Marianne Sivertsen-Næss, how can the Norwegian government sort of encourage industry to work on this? You mentioned the industry plan that you launched last year, for example.
Actually, last year we launched an ocean industry plan. Yeah. And that is a plan that has 10 principles how to make sure that we also in the future can have the kind of activity that we really want to in the ocean. And the pressure is getting bigger. And as I mentioned in my speech earlier, we need more energy, we need more food production, and we also have the transportation going on in the sea. So of course, we have to make sure that we can secure coexistence also in the future. Even though we have a long coastline and a vast ocean areas, we know that the conflicts are probably we will see more conflicts when it comes to use of the areas in the sea. Yep. So that is why we, as I said, the Ocean Industry Plan is to make sure that we both have more knowledge-based decisions and also make sure that we have process that is inclusive, that the stakeholders are in an early stage invited in, also to make sure that especially the fisheries are taken care of in the processes from now on.
So also bringing in the social component that Eivind was mentioning. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So both the environment as well, to make sure that we have a coexistence with the ocean as itself, and also all the industries going on, that also the existing one, but also the new ones that we want to the emerging industries. Yeah.
So obviously, at Nordic Innovation, we talk a lot to businesses. That's sort of part of our remit as an organisation. And we've talked to businesses about multi-use and why they're not really working on multi-use at the moment. And one thing that people often bring up is the sort of the thicket of regulations, how complicated it is to navigate the regulations, the regulatory framework around this. Yeah. Is that a priority for you to simplify the framework?
One part of this is actually also to see the barriers that come when it comes to regulations. Yeah. And also the sector authorities have to have this ocean industry plan as a part of what they do. So even though I think we have historically proved that we are quite good when it comes to coexistence. We need to be more proactively from now on. And also the sector authorities has to, from the beginning of their processes, when it comes to using the ocean areas, we have to make sure that all the stakeholders are invited in.
Yeah. Shalina Vicheva, I know that the Ocean Pact that you're now preparing, that part of the purpose of that is to sort of streamline or at least collect in one place the regulations that you have in the EU. Is that sort of a correct understanding of what you're... See if it's on?
Yes. Thank you very much for asking this question. It's impossible to cover everything that you want to say.
Yeah.
So happily answering the question. Indeed, this is one of the flagship projects of the new College of Commissioners, the second von der Leyen Commission, European Ocean Pact. On one hand, we have achieved a lot in integrated maritime policy, but it was more based on avoiding clashes at sea, optimal use of the maritime space through maritime spatial planning. But actually, even more important is that we don't have clashes at policy level with regard to the ocean, because ocean collects in a focal point environment and sustainability, blue economy, maritime security. And when we talk about maritime economy, it is transport, it is energy, it is the new marine-based biotax and so on. So we really need one single reference point with regard to the ocean. So ocean-related policies should talk to each other. They should be designed in a coherent and integrated manner. So that is the idea of the European Ocean Pact. Yeah. And of course, it is a European Ocean Pact. Europe is a big power. I'm talking here to another big power, which is Norway. But cumulatively, the member states, they have the biggest exclusive economic zone in the world, 17 million square kilometers, together with the outermost regions. We have 17,000 kilometers of coastal lines. So, as Minister was saying, it is a huge potential, but huge responsibility as well. So we need to lead by example, our member states, and of course we will continue to be a global leader throughout the world. And we have a very busy context now. I'm happy that I'm not going to talk now about BBNJ, because BBNJ was covered, but in the UN Ocean Conference in Nice in June, we would like to have the 60 ratification instruments. Europe will give a double-digit figure, but we expect more. So that is one thing in the global leadership, and the Ocean Pact will ensure that we are stronger and talking in one voice about ocean-related policies.
Interesting. Nina, I know you would like to make a comment here.
Yeah, and I think this is a really, really important point, and I would love to hear how the Norwegian government is working on this, because Marianne, or the Minister of Fisheries, has made some really important proposals and decisions recently. For example, banning fisheries in parts of the Oslo fjord. But then other ministers or decisions are being made that completely contradicts that by blasting out important spawning grounds, for example. So it's important not just to combine industries and get them to talk together, but also how does the government exactly talk together on the different dilemmas that they're facing, whether it's oil development, fisheries, marine protection, and so forth.
I think, first of all, we have to make sure that we have the knowledge and the data that we need to be successful when it comes to the spatial conflicts and how to use our ocean areas. So that is something going on. Also, I would like to highlight the work that the Center for Ocean and Arctic is doing. That is actually a part of the job, to make sure that we have both the knowledge and are in position to how to use the ocean areas in the future. But of course, there are conflicts, and for me, as a Minister of Fisheries, it's very important to make sure that also the fisheries are having a special attention from now on and going on, because that's not an industry or something you do that is, is determined to one area, because they have to follow the fish stocks. So we have to make sure that we have some kind of flexibility also for the future, to make sure that we can have this coexistence and So there's a process going on, and we have, of course, to take care of the environment as itself to make sure that we also can live by fisheries in the future.
Yeah, of course. Øyvind, would you like to comment on that, or?
Yeah, I think I'm very optimistic when I hear all the nice words about marine spatial planning and the need to do that, and the need to develop intelligent multi-use of the marine area. Because I believe that is a key issue also to develop this, both to develop the various industries that we are going to develop, but also in order to free space to do the marine protection. I don't see that one of those issues are more important than the others or less important. We have to do both. So we have to think and we have to plan together.
Yeah. We've just got a few minutes left, but first Nina and then Shalina. Yeah.
So in our sister organization, Hub Ocean, we've launched an ocean data platform where we're combining all the different data sources that exist on the ocean. And we'd be happy to provide the tool that you need to do a proper marine spatial planning, really showcase what is happening in the different areas, where is the most important biodiversity located, what are the industrial activities, so that proper marine spatial planning can take place. So we'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an announcement because the European Ocean Pact will be a very much a co-creative process, so we will be harvesting ideas. So I would like to say that last week we have launched a call for evidence. That means that everybody, including our partners from Norway, because it doesn't have a limited European connotation. If you have any feedback of how you see an ocean pact in action, it will be extremely useful for us to get your feedback. So feel free. It is up until the 17th of February. We have also our European Ocean Days. You're invited, Minister, at the beginning of March. So please contribute to this co-creation. We will be happy to get your feedback. On the data, we have an Arctic hub under the Marine Service of Copernicus. So probably we can really cooperate on how we can use data in the best possible way through Mission Ocean or Horizon and so on. A lot can be said there as well. So you're most welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you so much. And I think that's the time that we have. So thank you very much for an interesting discussion. I know we could have used a lot more time and I had a lot more questions. But I'll save them for another time. But thank you to Nina Jensen, to Marianne Sivertsen-Næss, to Shalina Vicheva, and to Øyvind Berg. And thank you all for listening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Emil, for moderating such an insightful discussion, I must say. I would also have loved to hear more from all of you. Now, we welcome Karen Ellemann. She is Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers. Her remarks is titled Opportunities for Regional Cooperation in Co-Location in the Blue Economy, and it will focus on how we can strengthen collaboration and drive progress in this critical area. So I'm really eager to hear your thoughts. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear Minister and dear friends, also just thank you to the Center of the Ocean and the Arctic. Thank you to UN Global Compact and Nordic Innovation for organizing this very important side event. Just a few words that the Nordic Council of Ministers is the intergovernmental body for our intergovernmental cooperation in the Nordics. And the Nordics here is covering, of course, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Greenland, Faroe Islands, and Åland. A lot of ocean. And, of course, needless to state that the ocean, of course, is essential for providing food, energy, recreation, and transportation. And it's also a main repository for biodiversity, and it has buffered the effects of climate change. However, and it has also been stated very clearly in the beginning here by the previous speakers, that the ocean is under serious threats. And that's why it is of critical importance that we, as an international community, as the Nordics, deliver on our commitment to protect the ocean. And the key to ensure this, also stated by you, I would like to confirm that, because the key is knowledge-based, sustainable ocean management, which will ensure both the necessary protection of valuable marine ecosystems and the sustainable use of marine resources for future generations. But this presents us, of course, with some clear challenges. You've talked about them. They are dilemmas. The transition to renewable energy is urgently necessary. I mean, we need to decarbonize to avoid the disastrous effects of climate change, which is nowhere more apparent than here in the Arctic. A significant part of this renewable energy will need to come from the sea. And the Nordic countries, they have set very ambitious targets for renewable energy, which requires major growth in offshore energy. And this will put additional pressure on marine spatial planning and the use of our ocean and our sea areas. And at the same time, we will continue to need food from the sea. And with a growing global population, I mean, we will need even more food from the sea. We know the growth will need to mainly come from aquaculture, which also demands the use of ocean space. So also, as we've just discussed, we will need to deliver on global biodiversity objectives, which means that large areas of the ocean will need to be protected and dedicated to nature. In addition to this, there is a host of other stakeholders and purposes that have a legitimate need for ocean space. And this, it's obvious. I mean, this raises some very important questions that I'm very pleased that we are discussing this morning, because how will we unite an efficient expansion of renewable energy, food production, and transportation with a healthy, resilient, and productive ocean? How will we practically set aside 30% of the ocean for nature? The Nordic Cooperation deals with various aspects of these questions, and let me just mention a couple. Nordic Innovation, one of our Nordic institutions, have been working with industry stakeholders on how we can create an innovative and sustainable ocean economy. And this means, for instance, testing the feasibility of co-location of different industries, as, for example, aquaculture and renewable energy, or fisheries, fisheries and the petroleum sector, and using, fisheries and petroleum sectors, and using those learnings to scale up solutions across our region here. Another one of our institutions, Norregio, is currently taking a close look at sustainable coexistence between offshore wind energy and the marine food sectors. They are looking for answers to questions on the potential conflicts between these green and blue sectors and how can we better promote synergies and enable collaboration. Integrated ocean management and the sustainable blue economy are key political priorities for the Nordic Council of Ministers. This priority is underscored in the Nordic Prime Minister's declaration from 2022 on the sustainable ocean economy and the green transition. We need more knowledge, research, dialogue, cooperation to be able to deliver on this commitment. And this will require a broad collaboration across the region and across disciplines. This integrated cross-sectoral approach is key for cooperation in the Nordic Council of Ministers. There is but one ocean, and we must make sure that we take a cooperative and coherent approach to ocean management for future generations to be able to use and produce from the ocean, while at the same time enjoying healthy and resilient marine environments. Regional cooperation is key to successful ocean management. And this is true when implementing marine spatial plans, when designating marine protected areas, as well as in the focus of today's side event, co-locating multiple sectors in the blue economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary General. I think we've put our finger on quite a few things that are good and important about this, but I also think we have there are some challenges, and I'm really looking forward to hearing our final panel. We will have some representation from different industries, and we'll try to explore some solutions, how we can work together. But who knows, maybe we'll also look at a few problems. So really looking forward to this panel. Moderating this session, we have Kristin Stenfeldt Foss. She's representing our co-host for this event, UN Global Compact Norway. And also, please, I welcome you up to the stage while I introduce you. First up, we have Kai Simon Yuen. He is an advisor at the Norwegian Shipping Association. He focuses on Arctic policy, international affairs, and geopolitics in his work, and he also serves as chair of the Arctic Economic Council. Next, we have Tor Are Varsin. He is head of department at the Norwegian Fishing Vessels Owners Association, and he will provide insights from the fisheries industry. We also have with us Jon Harald Log. He is the public affairs manager at the company Source Galileo. He is representing the offshore wind project Goliath Wind outside of Hammerfest to share lessons from an actual co-location project. And finally, we have William George. He is a senior broker at Gallagher Re, and he will offer us some perspectives on risk assessments in actual multi-use projects. So let's give our panelists a warm applause, and the floor is yours, Kristin.
Thank you, Sigrid. Thank you so much for that introduction. So far, we heard about the urgency of the ocean conservation, Norway's commitments, and the challenges of implementing marine multi-use. Now it's time to look forward, and in this panel, we will explore the concrete solutions and the practical pathways of how marine multi-use can contribute to achieving the ambitious 2030 goal. Our focus will now be on collaboration, innovation, and how different stakeholders, from fisheries to offshore wind, to shipping and to finance, and how we can work together to unlock the opportunities and sustainable ocean management. So to kick things off, I want to start with you, Kai Simon. As a major users of the ocean, the shipping industry has a clear stake in how marine spaces are managed. How can marine multi-use help balance competing demands for ocean space while ensuring ecological sustainability and social acceptance?
Well, I think we've discussed it at length before today. I mean, it's the fact that you look at things in the aggregate, what you stand to lose and what you stand to gain. Synergies on the one hand, and the environmental footprint being reduced, hopefully significantly, on the other. So there is a very clear, conceptual rationale here. But what we need is also what was said by many of the others in the last panel, that we need more research. We need to know more about what's going on. I think it's very clear to everyone what we stand to lose if we just start doing all kinds of stuff in the ocean. If all of these businesses go on their own, it's less clear what we stand to gain. And that's where I think the research comes in. Will it be commercially viable to do all these things? But for ship owners, so I represent both shipping, when it comes to ships carrying cargo, but also ships in the offshore service fleet. So Norway has the third largest offshore service fleet in the world, so we're a big player in that regard. And sometimes, in my industry, we will also be at ends. Some of my members can get into this conflict. So on the offshore energies, that's offshore wind. It's also oil and gas. They can have conflicting interests, but it's also the shipping lanes that can be displaced and not be so happy about that. So we see the benefits of marine spatial planning. We see that something needs to be done, because if you look at the pipeline, or there's not a pipeline, but rather the plans we have for offshore energy, offshore wind in Norway, we have a target of 30 gigawatts. We have 20 proposed areas by the Norwegian authorities. It's a huge area. It could be enough to reach our offshore wind goal by 5 or 10 times. And we're in the beginning steps of that process now to build out offshore wind. So it makes sense to get this in quick and to get it in from the beginning, and to keep all of these principles that have been mentioned in the planning from the get-go.
Okay, interesting. And moving over to the finance and insurance sector, Will, investing in multi-use solutions involves significant financial and environmental risks. What mechanisms, such as insurance projects and green financing models, can help de-risk these projects, but also make them attractive to investors?
Absolutely. As most of you will have encountered insurance in your daily lives, it won't surprise you that I start off by giving you a load of problems. Fundamentally, multi-use, I think, is a positive thing. In order to attract investment into a prototypical venture such as multi-use, you fundamentally need to provide investors with comfort around that investment and de-risk that investment. So that's where we start to talk about and look into the insurance side of things. So fundamentally, by increasing the intensity of assets and activity in any given sea area, you increase the exposure risk there, you increase the aggregation of potential losses in that space. It's important fundamentally to understand the risk that you're creating in order to be able to offset and mitigate that risk. I think that's the initial point. Before you even get to insurance, I think it's very important that you engage with the right people, be that local communities or professionals in any given industry who have fundamentally the expertise in that space to understand that risk and to give you the understanding of that risk. And then finally, obviously coming from the insurance side, we would look at insurance as a potential mechanism to drive investment by de-risking, by providing products of indemnity, whereby in the event of a loss, the purchaser of that policy is put back into a point that they were prior to that loss. By doing that, you can give investors comfort around the fact that their investment is not fully exposed. There's also other benefits to insurance, things such as soft governance. Insurance policies will require prudence on behalf of the operators of various of the areas, which has the effect of providing governance, meaning that these things must be conducted in a certain manner. There's also access to quite a lot of engineering and in-house expertise that you can gain from the insurance sector. That would be working in collaboration, again, with the professionals of any given industry and with the scientific community. And finally, there is an additional benefit in sort of secondary and tertiary industry whereby you can create jobs and, again, engagement with communities via that insurance model. So I think fundamentally, we would look at trying to de-risk the investment as far as possible for marine multi-use and then reduce the overall risk of loss to the sector.
Yeah, okay. And Jon Harald, what role does technology innovation play in enabling multi-use solutions, and how can we ensure these innovations are accessible and scalable?
It's strange coming from an industry, a new industry in the ocean, and we are discussing of increasing the 4% of preservation of the ocean area. But I think the most important is for we need more food and we need more energy, and both the Norwegian fishery and renewable energy production is needed in the future. So I think what we can achieve by doing like Goliat Wind, which is a small project, but it's a demonstration project, and it will give us a lot of information. Yeah. We are measuring up above sea, under sea, and on the seabed. So we will have a lot of answers, and we will contribute to the academia industry, which also is an industry, so we can know more about the ocean in the future, and we will have maybe not the answer we want, but we will have the answer for the ocean.
Yeah, so you want more research done in universities and more programs.
Yeah, it will be all the information we will measure in Goliat Wind will be shared Okay. And it could for the Arctic universities, it could be useful to educate the masters and even professors' degrees. So I think we can contribute a lot to the academia as well as an industry.
Absolutely, yeah. And since we're here in beautiful Tromsø and during Arctic Frontiers, we are very fortunate to have also someone from the fishery sector. And fishermen are concerned about losing fishing grounds to other industries. Tor Are, do you think the industrial development, including multi-use, is even possible in the ocean?
The short answer is no, I don't think so. Sorry to be a party killer, but I don't think it's possible for a wind farm and fishing in the same area. So our strategy is to try to find areas where it's possible where we are not fishing. And the fishing industry is it's the oldest industry in Norway, I think, at least one of the oldest, 900 years old, and we have at least since the 60s, we have new industry coming into the fishing grounds in the North Sea, and it's not been very easy for the fishermen to adapt to the new installations on the security zones. But we had some cooperation with the industry, and the most important thing is to dig down the pipelines and the cables, and so something has been done to make it possible to at least go near the installations, and you don't have the same problems that you see in Denmark and the Netherlands with a cable laying on the seabed. It's very stupid. But we have contact with Danish fishermen, and they are not very happy with the situation. First, the sea protected areas, and then the sea farms. Sorry, not the sea farms, but the wind farms. And then last year we had a visitor from the Netherlands. They left. They had a fishing business in the Netherlands, but they saw it was impossible to go on there because of protected area and sea wind farms that made it impossible to go on there. So they sold everything they had and moved to Lofoten in Norway. And that's kind of development is not what we want in Norway. So we have to see what kind of areas can be used for the wind industry. And comes to a protected area, it's important to be able to fish where the fish are and the right size and everything. And we also have an obligation to cut down on the diesel use of diesel. So that's also something. If big areas are used for wind farms, then it will cost more to fish the fish, and it will also mean more emission, and that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah. I think we need to then ask you the question, Jon Harald, since you're from the offshore wind sector, and your offshore wind infrastructure is being developed near an offshore petroleum installation. What challenges or opportunities do you see in co-locating renewable and traditional energy sectors, and how can this model inform future multi-use projects?
First of all, I would like to refer to the minister that communication is essential to early in the stage to have a communication with this new industry and the fisheries. Yeah. Because we need, if we are going to create a new future, we need to know the history, and we know to trust each other and be open with what we are doing. Of course, there is some negative sides close to an offshore oil and gas installation, but I see most positive sides, because we need ships oil and gas installation need ships. It's an area that's already been made into an industry area. We will reuse the cables that's already is there, so there will be no more cables making difficulties for the fisheries. So I think a lot of when you look to the safety and security in the ocean, we will be it will be a stronger only for not only for the fisheries that works around, but also for oil and gas and our industry, that we will have more present both helicopters and ships in the area.
Yeah, you want to comment on that, Qasimon?
Yeah, and this also goes on to the point of increased emissions from the fisheries fleet, because what we see as one of the first viable cases of multi-use will probably be the charging of these offshore supply vessels on the offshore wind farms, because they're built by ships, they're serviced, maintained, repaired by ships, and as of today, they largely run on conventional fuels, so heavy fuel oils or diesel or whatever. Norwegian ship owners have been at the forefront of decarbonizing that fleet. So if half of the ships in the world that have batteries on them today, half of the ships in the world today are Norwegian owned. But most of them are hybrids, because it takes a certain amount of electricity to go all the way out and do the work you're supposed to do and go back to port to recharge. So now we can do that possibly on the offshore wind farms. One of our members, GC Rieber, a ship owner, is developing a fully electric offshore supply vessel for that purpose. So it'll be really interesting to see. It'll be put to see the first quarter this year, and trials are likely to resume shortly. So I think that's an opportunity. And then another one that was mentioned would be to produce hydrogen or ammonia or other alternative fuels on these sites. Instead of using the electricity, instead of laying a cable to the mainland, you could have a plant to produce that fuel there, and it would be essentially like a gas station at sea. You could charge your vessel, you can get these fuels. That I think is a bit further ahead, because these are new fuels, new technologies. We don't know how they're supposed to work for all intents and purposes for the entire value chain. But that's also a possibility. So I think offshore wind could be a catalyzer here. Absolutely. Also for marine spatial planning, because I think we see the most opportunities. We don't have the entire picture as of yet, but I think the way to move forward is to have pilots like Goliath Winde. And just to be clear, he's not a member. But I think, building on that experience and go forward, I think that's the way to go. Yeah,
and you were just mentioning it right now, because I want to steer us a little bit in before we go in for the final questions about some policy questions. And Dorothy was mentioning it in the beginning of this panel discussion with Norway's lack of spatial ocean management. And unlike the EU, which has a marine spatial planning in place, a recent policy brief highlighted the importance of addressing the gap. Why are spatial plans crucial for achieving multi-use goals at sea, and what challenges hinder their implementation in Norway? I think this question is for you as well, Qasimon.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I think General Director Macheva from DG Mare, made the point that they've had this legislation for 10 years. The North Sea is one of the most, where you see the most competition for resources, because it's good for fishing, it's good for oil and gas, it's good for offshore wind, etc. It's good for shipping. But, we don't see that many concrete marine multi-use projects there as of yet. So what gives? If everyone thinks this is a great idea, what gives? Yeah. But I think, coming back to the same point again, that we need to get more knowledge. We need to know more about the upsides, because I think the private sector will be more into this if we can get more information on the commercial case. The all good looks good on the slides. When you have like an aquaculture site combined with an offshore wind farm, we're all for it, but we need to make sure that it makes sense commercially as well. So there are some questions that need to be filled out, but I think I give a lot of credit to the EU for moving that way and for doing this work for 10 years, because that means a lot of the work will already be done for us, and especially when we move forward on offshore wind. But of course, we won't move ahead on this unless we get going with offshore wind as well. So
Yeah.
I've said my piece on that point.
Perfect. And looking ahead to 2030, how can marine multi-use help us strike the balance between conserving 30% of the ocean and sustainability, utilizing and remaining 70%? This is a final question, so I want to ask all four of you to think about this. And also, as a final thought, what is each of yours perspective and key hopes for the future and the action? Do you believe is what action do you believe is most critical to achieving it? And let's start with you, Tor Arne.
I think it's the fishing industry needs the space where the fish are, the fishing grounds, and to avoid offshore wind. I think that's the most space-consuming industry. And there's something we haven't been talking about, but there's a very big difference in economy because the fishermen, they have to make the money themselves, and the offshore wind, they are getting the money from the state, basically. So, and that's a very huge difference. And we see that they have enormous resources on that side. And what we need is to have a good science to see what kind of impact will wind, big area with offshore wind, what impact will that have on the seabed, on the fish, the fishing industry, and so on. So we need more information about the seagulls, the seabirds, what will happen, and we're talking about sea farming in the same area, and what about the microplastic from the windmills, so on? Is that a problem, or is it just something that somebody tells us just to stop the windmills? We need more information about the industry, and when it comes to areas, protected areas, we can easily protect 30%, and it doesn't mean anything for anyone if you take the deep sea ocean. But I guess that's not where we are heading. It's a continental shelf, and that's where all industry are. The oil industry, the windmills, and the fisheries are on the same place. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And Will, what do you think?
I think I'm conscious we haven't got a huge amount of time, but I think fundamentally it's a fairly crucial aspect to achieving the goal of 2030, which fundamentally is not that far away. Based upon what we sort of talked about in this panel, it sounds as though a priority is understanding which of the marine sectors can realistically mesh together the best in order to achieve the result that you need in terms of multi-use. There will be bits that simply don't mesh as well as others, but there is a way forward. But collaboration is key. And data is key. If you were looking at another sector, you would be able to rely upon 40, 50, 60 years of back data in order to understand it. We don't have that luxury here. And that comes back to the collaboration aspect and the reliance on industry professionals.
Yeah. And Kai-Simon?
Well, if there's one thing I'd like to add, it's that we focus a lot on it being marine, and so you get the pictures of these installations in the ocean. But I think a very significant part of the synergies will actually be on land with ports, because we need to invest heavily in port infrastructure if we're going to do what we want to do with offshore wind, and I think that can also have positive spillover effects for other actors in the same space. So that's also something I think can help move the discussion forward, because when you get other stakeholders in as well, I think there will be a lot of port cities that would be interested in the scenarios that you could map out. What kind of port infrastructure do you need for marine multi-use?
Yeah. And lastly, on Harald.
I agree with the Fiskebåt that we need more knowledge, and I hope the project we are planning in Goliat will give us more knowledge about the seabed, which we has already survive some months ago, and we will also we're also concerned about the birds and microplastic in the ocean. But I think both fisheries and the offshore wind will have to look at the microplastic in the ocean, because we are coming into the ocean, but there's already microplastic in the ocean. So we already have a big problem, and we will try to not give it more into the ocean. So but knowledge. I think knowledge is the most important, and communication with the stakeholders in the ocean.
Yeah, and collaboration. So yeah, very
and
interesting.
I've been talking a lot to the Sami people the last years, and they say they don't call it as a stakeholder, they call it a right holder. Yeah. So maybe we should look at it as a right holder.
Definitely. Thank you so much for insightful and good reflections. Now for some closing remarks, please help me welcoming Oda Bjerkan, Executive Director in UN Global Compact Norway.
Thank you so much to all panelists, moderators, and participants for today's insightful discussions. Your contributions has truly highlighted the importance of working together to address the challenges that we face. This event has reaffirmed the critical role of collaboration among diverse stakeholders in achieving the ambitious goals, such as the 30 by 30 target. As part of the UN system and UN Global Compact, our role is to bring together businesses, policymakers, and civil society to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. And the UN system is focused on driving 3 key areas of action: marine spatial planning to reduce conflicts and enable sustainable multi-use of ocean spaces; sustainable financing models to support nature-positive projects while minimizing risks and ensuring long-term viability; and innovative solutions to balance economic growth with the hard task of conservation and ecological resilience. The 30 by 30 target outlined in the Montreal Nature Agreement is more than a conservation goal. It represents a shared commitment to global solidarity, responsibility, and action. Marine multi-use exemplifies SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals. By fostering collaboration across sectors, industries, and nations, it demonstrates how breaking down silos can lead to innovative and sustainable solutions. Today's discussions have emphasized the urgency of taking decisive action. The 2030 deadline is rapidly approaching, and the solutions we embrace must be both inclusive and effective to ensure meaningful progress. We have heard so much interesting on today's stage. I've tried to write down a few of the points. We started off with Dorothy, who reminded us that the ocean is under a serious threat. She talked about how politicians have responded and said they say we shall preserve, but how much has been preserved? 4.5%, she says. What tools do we have to succeed? She has pointed out many of them. She's talked about the Norwegian paradox and how multi-use can and potentially will help us achieve the global SDGs. She referred to Silvio Funtovic, which said, "I don't care about the project, I care about the process." And then she ended off her talk by saying, "Let's not turn our backs to nature," which is a good reminder for all of us. And then the minister talked about the huge opportunities, but also the huge obligations. She referred to knowledge as a compass, and she talked about, quite honestly, that there are dilemmas. Food, energy, and transportation is needed. It's not going to be an easy task. The first panel talked about how this is a hugely complex topic. We were reminded that maritime spatial planning has been in the EU legislation for more than 10 years, and also that many of the solutions would need multi-use to be implemented, especially if we're going to reach not only the 30 by 30 target, but also the climate goals. We were also reminded that we need to protect what is important for us, not just strict protection, as we talked about today, but to take care of the rest of the 70% that we're not preserving and treat it in a sustainable manner. Nina Jensen told us about how they cooperate with oil companies to explore how platforms can be utilized after end of life. And she said quite clear that we are simply running out of space, but also out of biodiversity. They all said, and it was repeated quite many times, that it's all about knowledge. The minister mentioned the importance of stakeholder dialogue, or as we were reminded here right now, right-holder dialogue. And we also got to know about the European Oceans Pact as a common reference point that they work on in the European Union. The Secretary General of Nordic Councils of Ministers held an excellent speech and reminded us again that the solution is knowledge, but also regional cooperation as a key. There will be huge dilemmas, and it will put additional pressure on the ocean. Lastly, the second panel talked about the importance of understanding the risks, data, but again, knowledge, and that it might be clear to see what the losses can be, but maybe the wins are a bit more unclear. We also had a self-proclaimed party pooper in the panel, which I think is quite important in conversations like this, because if we all really agreed on everything, then why haven't we succeeded before? I want you all to imagine an Arctic where marine multi-use is not just a strategy, but the beacon of how we harmonize conservation with sustainable development. Envision thriving ecosystem that sustain resilient and prosperous community. This is a future within our reach. As we conclude, I encourage you all to carry the energy and ideas from today's discussions back to your sectors and to your networks. Let's translate these conversations into tangible actions. Thank you very much.
Just to say that was it for today. There's a big picture session touching upon the same topic in the back at the edge, and just wanted to thank you all for coming and for joining in our discussions today. Have a good day. Bye.